so quiet. It feels weird. That's not what we're known for, is being a quiet bunch, really. I wanted to share this with you just real quick. A couple weeks ago, we went and we were in the Bracey's neighborhood, and we went and did some serving back there, and we cut down some trees, and we washed some windows, and we some guys pressure washed. I think they thought they were going to pressure wash a driveway, but it turned into pressure washing a driveway and like the entire sidewalk and on down the cul-de-sac. I mean, it kind of went around for a while. But there was a lot of awesome stuff that got done. I went to our mailbox this week, and I just went to check our mail and at the church. And I got a card, and I opened up the card, and I didn't recognize who it was from. And it had this adorable puppy-kitty combination on it. And it's from a sweet lady named Ruth. And Ruth was the lady who some of you went and washed her windows. And she sent this card, and she said that she was sending, this is what I love about Ruth, is apparently she's a feisty gal enough that Diane Bracey told her, you cannot pay us for us coming to serve you. And she was like, so I enclosed a check to your church. She found her own way. She doesn't need your permission, people. And so she said this, and she sent this to us. Thank you for sending workers who worked outside my house on Saturday, June 11th. They would take no money, and they also cleaned my windows and my lanai and my furniture. What a wonderful group to do that, and I appreciate them, and they appreciated me. She said this, they did it for me out of love. God bless them. I loved that. I thought that was awesome. And so anyways, Ruth sent this, and she did send a check to the church. She did her own thing. She found her way around how to pay for it. But it was awesome that she would do that. And so thank you guys for doing things like that, for serving in ways like that. I think that's awesome. And that's really what we're about. That's really the type of church we want to be. Again, not a community church saying come to us, but a church in the community saying we're coming to you. And I think that's just amazing. And so anyways, thanks for doing that. This week, this message may be a complete train wreck. I'm going to be honest with you. It could just completely fall apart on me. But I've been thinking about some things, and I really want to share them with you, just a few things that really have hit me hard over the last couple weeks. And I don't know, I want to just ask you a quick question. Do you have any of those friends in your life who are like the loose cannon, and you don't know what they're going to say next? And you're like sitting at restaurants with them, and you're just kind of like on pins and needles because you don't know if they're going to insult the waitress or they say something very nice. They might say something awesome, but they could say something horrible. Or like when you introduce them to your family or your friends, you're like, this is Bill. And you're almost like watching like, hold it together, Bill. Just say like, and they have no filter. Sometimes they just say things, and you're like, it gets them in all kinds of trouble. Do you have friends like this? And they have that like that word vomit where they just can't stop saying things. You're like, no, don't say it. Don't say, oh, come on. And you know it's coming, and you're scared of it, and it's going to happen. You know people like this. We all have friends like this, I think. I have friends like this. You probably have friends like this. I met a guy not long ago. He's a church planner as well, and we're sitting at a restaurant, and he's a church planner. He's a type A guy. He's just like, get out of my way. I got things to do. Doesn't care about feelings. Doesn't care about emotions a whole lot. Just, I got things to get done. And he said that we were sitting in this restaurant, and our waitress comes over, and she's talking to us, and he looks at her, and as she leaves, he goes, hey, Kevin, is she pregnant? And I was like, I'm not asking that question. I'm not getting in the middle of this. He goes, well, here's why I'm asking. And he's a guy who does this. He's a loose cannon, and he apparently learned his lesson on this one because he said, well, not long ago, I was at my church, and I was talking to somebody, and a woman who's very involved in our church came walking by. And he said, and I just looked over, and I thought for sure she was pregnant. And he said, so I just pointed, I said, hey, what's going on there? And she looked at him, and she looked down, and she looked back at him, and she said, I'm fat. Yeah, and I said, what did you do? Like, how do you recover from that? And he was like, oh, I didn't. I just walked away. I walked straight to a bathroom. He said, I've seen her since. We have not talked about it. We will never talk about it. How do you recover from that? And I was like, oh, I mean, like, my stomach was like hurting as he was telling me the story. I was like, I lost my appetite. I was like, I can't even talk about it. How did you do that? And you know people like this that are like these loose cannons. I want to talk about that real quickly, and we're picking up in Acts chapter 3. Again, we're like 7 weeks into Acts, and we're just still in chapter 3. I'm so sorry. We're going to make it through, okay? Just hang in there with me. But in Acts chapter 3, Peter is this guy. Peter is always the guy who says things that you're like, it could be awesome or it could fall apart. If you remember, last week we talked about Peter walking into the gates of the temple, and he saw this lame man sitting there who's been lame since birth. For 40 years, this guy's been sitting at this temple gate. And Peter comes up to him, and he says something awesome. He knocks it out of the park, and the guy asks him for money. And what does Peter say? He says, I don't have silver, I don't have gold, but what I do have, I'll give to you. And he takes the man's hand. He says, in the name of Jesus Christ, rise up and walk, right? He nails it. He nails that moment. It's awesome. He says the right thing, and he picks the man up, but that moment right there is about to get a lot hairier. It's about to get worse. And Peter doesn't stop there. So if you recall, that's where we're at, and he says this thing. He says, if you remember, we talked about that he doesn't give him what he wants money, but he gives him what he needs, which is healing, right? And so the story continues. It doesn't end there. And Peter takes this man by the hand, and they begin walking together. Weird. And in chapter 3, it says this, while the beggar held on to Peter and John, all the people were astonished and came running to them and saw in the place called Solomon's Colonnade. So everybody sees this man that's now healed. And notice he's still holding on to Peter and John. Remember, they didn't leave him at the gates. They started walking with him. They walked in community with him into the temple. And they walked with him, and this man's holding on to him. Now, it could be that he's holding on to them because physically he needs it. Maybe his legs aren't strong enough. Maybe he's not ready to walk on his own. And so he's trying to hold on to him. Maybe that's what's going on. Or maybe he just won't let go. Because he's like, these guys, they healed me. I want to hang out with these guys. I want to be with these guys. And he's hanging on to them. Maybe he's with them because of that. It says that he's holding on to them. But when Peter saw this, and he sees all these people coming to them, when Peter saw this, he said to them, men of Israel, why does this surprise you? Now, Peter starts into a pretty awesome speech right here. It starts off really good. It's a really good feel-good speech. It starts off really good. Why does this surprise you? Why do you stare at us as if by our own power or godliness we had made this man walk? Why do you see it like we did this? Like we healed this man? We didn't have anything to do with this. Peter's saying it's not us that healed this man. Right? And he says, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of our fathers, has glorified his son Jesus. So he's talking about Jesus. Again, it's a feel-good message. It's going the right direction. Peter's doing really good. And then all of a sudden, it goes from a really feel-good message to a really, unhappy message. It goes from a really nice, Joel Osteen type of thing to something that would, depress Oprah. It's one of those things where you're like, this is going to get really ugly really fast. And he turns on a dime, and instead of it being a feel-good message where everything's going to work out, he takes it a whole different route. And suddenly, here it comes. He just turns and he says this, you handed him over to be killed, meaning Jesus. You handed him over to be killed, and you disowned him before Pilate, though he had decided to let him go. You disowned the holy and righteous one and asked that a murderer be released to you. You killed the author of life, but God raised him from the dead. We are all witnesses of this. All right. How do you really feel, Peter? You got anything else you want to say? I picture Peter saying all this, and his friend John is over in the corner oh, come on, bro. Oh, no. Oh, we're going to get kicked out of here. John's going to be come on, man. Oh, no. And Peter takes it a whole different direction, and he turns it on them, and he says, you did this. This is your fault. And then he turns a corner back, and he comes back into something, and he says, but by faith, in the name of Jesus, this man whom you see and know was made strong. It is in Jesus' name. So he's saying it wasn't us that did this, but in Jesus' name, this man who you see was made strong. In Jesus' name, the faith that comes through him has given him complete healing, as you all can see. And he's like, here's exhibit A, guys. Jesus' power is real. It's right here. You can see it. And he talks about faith twice in this passage. And he talks about faith, that his faith has made him well, as you can see. His faith has made him well, as you can see. See, that's not normally the way things go, is it? Usually what we have faith in, when we have faith in something, we don't get to see it. He has exhibit A. He has something right there. See? Look. Here's the example of what I'm talking about. We don't usually get that luxury. Faith is something that doesn't always get to be seen. And he talks about this word faith, and he's talking about this faith of this man has made him well. But what is faith? Like the word has almost lost its meaning. Sometimes it's almost a derogatory term. I mean, sometimes you almost hear it and it sounds like faith is almost like this Christian cop-out. When we don't want to talk about things, and we don't want to like get down to the bottom of things, what we say is we're like, well, just have more faith then probably. Like that's what you should do. Like faith has become like, it's just kind of our fill in the blank on things sometimes. Sometimes we hear that, you know, if you just had more faith, this would happen. Faith, and it's almost lost its meaning. But faith is a powerful term. And I think that sometimes we get so confused about what faith looks like. And maybe it's because it's hard to have faith. I've had conversations with people over the last couple of weeks that have just been so heavy about what is faith and what does it really look like and how do I have more of it and what do I do with faith? And maybe it's because it's hard to have faith right now. Because see, faith is a hard thing to pick up on. It's a hard thing to have. I mean, let's face it, we live in a world with circumstances that really dictate our faith. I mean, when there's shootings that happen in cities not that far from us, it's really hard to have faith, isn't it? It changes the game. Your circumstance suddenly becomes bigger than your faith. Your faith is somehow forgotten in the middle of that, and you start to look at the circumstance, and faith is really hard to hold on to at that time. When tragedy happens, when bad things happen, when circumstances hit, circumstances seem to trump our faith sometimes. So what is faith, and how do we have more of it? How in the world are we supposed to have this thing called faith? In Hebrews, there's a verse that gives us a really, really clear picture of this. The author of Hebrews, and we don't know who the author of Hebrews is, but the author of Hebrews writes this beautiful passage in Hebrews chapter 11. And they give us a very clear picture of what faith is. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. It's hope, and it's being sure of a hope. It's being sure of hope, of things we cannot see. We're sure of those things. Again, when we see circumstances like what we've seen over the last week, when we've seen circumstances in our own lives that we think are insurmountable, it's really, really hard to have hope in something we can't see because the things we can see seem so heavy. The things we can see seem to trump the things we can't see, right? And it becomes very hard to have hope in something that we can't even see. Have faith in something that we're hoping for. And it goes on, and it says this is what the ancients were commended for. So he's saying this is what people throughout the Bible have been commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what is visible. So he's saying, see, God took the invisible and he turned it into something visible. We believe that. That takes faith to believe that God made something visible out of something invisible. By faith, Abel offered God a better sacrifice than Cain did. But by faith, he was commended as a righteous man. When God spoke well of his offerings, and by faith he still speaks even though he is dead. And by faith, Enoch, remember Enoch? We talked about Enoch 2 weeks ago when we talked about the tongues of fire. This guy Enoch who maybe never died. It's believed never died. Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. So before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Now, this is a lot of pressure. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. There's a lot of pressure on that, right? Like that sounds kind of harsh. Like, whoa, take it easy here. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Why is that? Without faith, we cannot please God. There's part of me that believes that we were created literally to have faith. It's not about having faith in humanity. It's that faith is humanity. Having faith is humanity. This morning I was in my, we call it a groffice. It's my garage, but we've turned it into an office for the church, so we call it a groffice. And I'm sitting in the groffice, and we have these cat fights in our neighborhood. I'm not talking about like women hurting each other. I'm talking about literal cats that they fight in the neighborhood, and it's the loudest thing. Like, and I don't understand how they are so loud. And today, and I'm not a cat person. In fact, I kind of hate cats. And today, though, I heard this cat fight go down, And again, try not to picture that as like women fighting in the middle of the streets. That's not what happens in my neighborhood. But like there's this cat fight that goes down. There's these two cats. They come in. They're wrestling. And there's you can't say wrestling when it's cats. It's wrestling. And they're wrestling. You can hear these horrible noises. And I hear one of them like get hurt. And you can actually hear it. And so this stupid cat is out there. And I don't want the cat. And the thing, I don't want to be near it. But I hear it hurting. And you can hear it calling out. And so I eventually just go outside. And I help the cat, and I pick it up, and I took it over to our yard, and I left it there, and I got some milk. And I thought, this is apparently cat world. Like, this is, and I'm like, please don't come back. I mean, like, get better and leave whenever you're ready, but, that's my thing with, I don't love cats. But there was one there. And I think about cats, and I think about, like, things like this, and you're like, this is all they will know. Cats don't have the ability to believe, to have confidence in what they cannot see. Right? Animals do not have the opportunity to believe in what they cannot see. They know what they know. They have what they have. Right? Like cheetahs aren't out there like dreaming of what they could become someday. They're just being cheetahs. They're just doing what cheetahs do. Right? Plants are the same way. I mean, plants, it's not like a dandelion is a dandelion is a dandelion. They do whatever dandelions do. They mess up people's yards. That's their job. Right? They make us all have back problems. That's what dandelions do. That's all they're ever going to do. That's all they're ever going to become. That's the way God created them. And when he created man, he created angels before man, right? We see angels show up way earlier than man. He creates angels, and there's something unique. And then he creates animals, and there's something unique. And he creates, specifically between them, he creates man. We're not angels. Angels have this ability to see the inner workings of what God is doing. They see the glory of God on an ongoing basis. They don't have to have faith because they see it. And then he creates animals, and animals don't have any faith because there's nothing else that they're created to be. They're created to be animals, and that's great. I love that about them, but that's all they're created to be, is just to be animals. But we were created specifically in between those two for something greater than that. And I believe that we were created to have this thing called faith. We're the only entity that has the ability to have confidence in what we cannot see. Confidence in something that we hope for. We're the only species that can do this. Without that, we're no different than any other animal, right? And go back to that first verse. That first verse says, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Do you guys ever have those Bible verses that you've walked past a million times and we all just kind of agree, like, that's a good verse. That's a really good verse. But like, we don't really want to dig into it because we know it's going to be hard if we actually like paid attention to it. And so everybody in the Bible study is just like, yep, we agree. Let's turn the page. Because you don't want to dig into it. You don't want to spend time on that verse because it might mess you up a little bit. And this is what he's saying is we have confidence in what we hope for, an assurance of things that we cannot see. But we don't live like that. We do not live like that. We don't live in faith almost ever, if we're honest with ourselves. We don't live with this ability to say that we're going to see we're going to believe in things that we can't see. What do we have more faith in, the things that we have or the things that we hope for? We have more belief in the things that we have than the things we hope for, right? I mean, come on, like, don't act like you've never had this in a job, where you have a job or you have a friend who has a job and they're like, man, I hate this job. Like, I'm not called to do this job. I'm not good at this job. It's not something that really fits my passion sets. I'm bad at this job. I don't like the people I work with. I hate driving up to the building. And you're like, hey, dude, why don't you quit your job? And they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. Why don't you look for another job? No, I'm not going to look for another job. Why? Because this is the job I have, not the job I hope for. I have more confidence in the job that I have than the one that I hope for. And that makes sense. But it's also hard sometimes when you're going, but maybe you should look for that thing that's the one you hope for. Have you ever dated somebody that you don't like? You don't have to answer right now. I will be completely honest with you. I have dated someone that I didn't even really like. I mean, like, truthfully, that happened to me one time. And I was like, I'm not even sure what we're doing here. Like, I'm paying for a lot of meals. I'm chauffeuring you around town, but I'm really not sure why we're even doing this because I don't even think we get along. And when you see somebody like that, you know the people in your life that they come to you and they're like, oh man, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, they're just a jerk. They're horrible to me. They treat me like this. And you're like, why don't you leave them? Like, why don't you find somebody else? Like, you're just dating them, move on. And they're like, no, because this is the one I have, not the one I'm hoped for. And then secretly they're going, because I can change them. And when you're saying I can change them, all you're saying is that I'm hoping what I have will become what I hope for. Right? We have more confidence in what we have than what we hope for. Now, hope only exists in the future. Hope cannot be a past tense thing. Hope in the past is called regret. But hope only exists in the future. And that concerns me when I think about the church sometimes, because I think when we're supposed to be the hope of the world as the church, what are we most known for? We're most known for what's happened in the past. We should be known as people who are looking to the future. But I believe that this is what makes us human. This is what gives us humanity, is we have the ability to have faith. This last week, some friends of ours, you may know them, some good friends of mine, their names are Allie and Eben, and Allie and Eben have a little girl named Luna, and they were in a car accident on 19. It was just horrible. They were sitting dead still at the light at basically Curlew and 19 there, going south, and they're just talking. They're actually making fun of the car in front of them for how slow they're going. And as they're talking, this huge F-150 does not slow down at all, does not even know they're there, and they're in a little tiny car, and it goes a full 55 miles an hour right into the back of them. No brakes, no nothing, just completely goes right into the back of their car. And they get out, Allie goes into mom mode where like the adrenaline kicks in and she's awesome and she's like a superhero and she's like tearing the airbags away and she's trying to get to her little girl and she grabs her little girl and she realizes she can't pull her little girl out because her legs are wedged into the back of her seat. She can't get her out. And so some firemen show up and they're trying to get her out because there's actually another accident right around the corner. And so the firemen show up and they're trying to help them out and they get their little girl out. Allie gets out and she has this huge gash in the back of her head. Fortunately, she is a redhead, so it all kind of blended in. But there was this huge gash. She had 5 staples they put in her head right away. And then they took Eben, her husband, out. He had demolished the steering column with his body. And his ribs had gone straight into it and completely accordioned that steering column with his own body. And he had 5 ribs that were broken in 9 different places. And so he had just cracked ribs all over the place. And he actually had a concussion when he got out of the car. And they asked him, they said, where are you? And he said, I think I'm on Highway 19. They said, who's the president? And he said, George Bush. And they were like, okay, we better get him to the hospital. So they had to split up the family. They went to 2 different places. Dad had to go to one place because he had head trauma, so he went down to St. Pete. The mom and daughter, Allie and Luna, they go to another hospital because they have a children's wing that they need to be at. And they take him there. Allie is in full mom mode. She's got bruises all over the place, but she's like, don't check me, and I don't care about me. I'm here for her. And they go and they take her daughter. They put her on a bed, and her femur is not just like broken. It is completely snapped. I mean, it's completely broken in half. And she has this broken femur. She has her tibia is broken as well, and it's snapped in half as well on the same leg. On the other leg, she has a broken ankle, and so she's looking at these 2 casts that will be on both of her legs. She's not going to be able to walk for 6 weeks. And I'm sitting there with this family, and you're watching them. And I'm watching them as we just try to walk through it. And I remember walking into the room and seeing this poor little girl in a neck brace and with splints up and down her arms, and her legs are covered because you don't want to see what they look like at this moment. And I just remember walking in. I'm supposed to be like the pastor who's there to comfort, and I'm weeping with her. I'm just standing there with her like, I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you look at your child and have hope. At this moment, you're just so hurt for them. You're hurting more than they are a lot of times, and you're hurting for them. And you're hoping, is their life going to go back to normal? Is this going to work out? Is she going to be okay? And so I was there for a while with them, and I brought some toys for her to play with where she didn't have to get up and move around. She could just lay in the bed. And so the surgeon came in, and he brought those cool little, like computers on wheels now that they used to do. When I was a kid, it was like film on like a fluorescent light situation. It looked really cool. Now it's like these awesome, laptops on wheels, and they bring over the thing and they show the x-rays. And he's like, these are the x-rays of her legs, and it looks horrible, right? I mean, you've got a snapped femur, and you're going, is she ever going to, like, is this going to go back to normal? And the surgeon looks at her, and he says, I can't talk in 100% confidence. I can't say with 100% certainty that everything's going to be perfect. But I can tell you this. She's going to be fine. He was like, she's going to be okay. He said, if it was any of us, that'd be a different conversation. But a 3-year-old, she's going to be okay. She's going to be able to walk again. Her body will probably heal as if this never happened. And he's like, I've done a million of these surgeries. I promise you, we're going to be fine. She's going to be fine. And you could see Allie, her mom, standing there, who has been just broken down and in tears all day and trying to be a strong mom and trying to overlook her own bruises and her own bandages to take care of her daughter. And you could physically see her lift a little bit as the surgeon said, she's going to be okay. And she said, I remember her saying under her breath, she goes, we can do that. We can do that. And he said, it's going to be 6 weeks in cast, and she's going to be in a wheelchair. We're going to get her a custom wheelchair, and she'll have 6 weeks in cast, and then after that, she should be able to start doing rehab and starting to walk again. And I remember Allie going, I can do that. I can do that. And you could see her lift as he said, your daughter's going to be okay. See, we are the only species that can have hope in things we can't see. She didn't see her daughter physically being able to walk again, but in her mind, she could hope for what was not there yet. She had hope in things that were yet unseen. And that's the unique thing about humans. I think we're designed to have faith. I think it's just part of what God put within us, that faith is not just what pleases God, it's what makes us understand the nature of God. God created us in his image, and we have this thing called faith that no other creature has. We have to lean into that. We have to understand that. And this man in this story, this lame man who's now been brought to walk again, he had this faith. And it says in chapter 3, when Peter's talking about him, it actually says that he says, in Jesus' name and the faith that comes through him that has given this complete healing to him, as you all can see. Complete healing. He says this word complete. And I wonder if it's because his healing wasn't just healing his health. It wasn't just restoring his health. It was restoring his humanity. He gave him the opportunity to have faith, and it didn't just restore his health, it restored his humanity, restored who he was built to be, who God wired him to be. So Peter continues in this sermon about faith, and he continues to talk, and he kind of gets a little bit more heated, and Peter kind of picks up a little bit. And actually, as he's preaching, it says in chapter 4, Peter's still talking to people. He's still preaching, and as he's preaching, it says that they seized him, and they took him to jail as he was preaching. It would be like me preaching right now, and like officers come in these side doors, and they put me in flex cuffs, and they're like dragging me off. And as Peter's getting drug off, he basically makes an invitation. He's like, and if you want to come follow Jesus too, just come with me. And for some reason, it says that 5,000 people thought that was a good idea. Like, yeah, I guess I can do that. That was pretty good. You know, I don't know why, but 5,000 people, it says 5,000 men, and that literally means men. It could be up to if you spin that out, that could be 10,000 people that said, yeah, I want to go do that too. I want to have that kind of faith. He called them into this thing called faith, and they accepted it. And they took the challenge to become humans and have faith. And so he's calling it out. And see, the thing I love about Peter in this scenario is he's talking about faith, he's telling people about faith, but then he's living out faith. See, he's being arrested. He's being taken away. Again, we let our circumstances dictate our faith rather than letting our faith dictate our circumstances. Right? His circumstance could have said, I'm going to jail. This is all going to fall apart. Nothing's going to work out now. But he doesn't let his circumstance dictate his faith. His faith dictates his circumstance. And he makes one final plea, and people respond. That's the biggest thing I think when it comes to faith, is I think we have this idea that we have to have it all together, that our circumstances have to be perfect when it comes to faith. We have to have the whole act together, right? Before I'll talk to somebody about my spiritual life, I have to have this perfect faith that's all put together. I have to have my circumstances just right. That's not how it works. Peter's circumstances are terrible. but he still has his faith. Or before I'll come to church, this is awesome to me. This is crazy. People really believe that before I show up to church, my circumstances have to be perfect. No, your circumstances don't have to be perfect to come to church. This is where we want you if your circumstances aren't perfect. All we care about is that you have the faith to show up. That your circumstances don't define your faith. They don't dictate your faith. Your faith's dictating your circumstances. I see it all the time with people, they want to talk to other people about their faith. They want to invite people into it. Sometimes they want to take a next step. Even in this, like I've talked to people who want to take a next step into helping at this church and being a part of what we're doing and getting involved. And they're like, but when I get all my circumstances right, then I'll do it. No. Your circumstances don't have to be right. Your faith does. Just step out on faith. I promise you that God will meet you there. Take that step of faith. We wait for our circumstances to be right, and we're never going to ever get it right. We're never going to do anything at all. If the disciples, if they would have waited for their circumstances to be right, they would have never gotten anything done. You can't wait for your circumstances to be right. You just have to be right. You have to live on that faith, because that's what makes you human. Because you have the ability to believe. You have the ability to have faith. You have the ability to trust in the things you cannot see. That's the way God wired you. And we have to be a people of faith the same way. We have to be a people of faith the same way. So if there are things in your life that you need to take a next step on in your faith, don't let your circumstances define that. Let your faith define that. Don't let your circumstances be what get in the way. Step out on faith, because it's what you were created to do.